Well, looking forward into the next 10 years, you have to think about the fact that a CEO's world is filled with a potpourri of demands that are always challenging them, and they're not always complementary to each other. And finding that balance is certainly an imperfect exercise at best. As we look forward to the next 10 years, I think that the big 5 things that you'll find CEOs of transit agencies focusing on are, of course, first and foremost, safety, followed by funding, staffing, technology, and the regionalization of transportation services. So let's touch on those 5 areas. When you look at funding for right now for transit is a real challenge. When you look at the fact that transit systems are growing at a rate that's faster than the economic recovery, it's faster than vehicle miles traveled and many other economic indicators, how do we meet those growing demands for capacity constraints and state of good repair and build on systems that our cities are going to need now and in the future? And when you think about the fact by 2025 we'll have another 100 million people in this country, we have to have that infrastructure in place to meet their needs. The other part of funding is, as we move to a world that is much more based on financing than traditional grant funding, we have to have our CEOs in a place where they're able to speak that language in the financial world, the financing language, and that we structure our reporting and our interaction with the private sector in a way that we each speak a language that is common to all parties. As we move on to staffing, I think that staffing is going to be a real challenge in the area of getting the right people to match up with the demands of our customers. So we have a changing dynamic with our customers, a changing dynamic with the workforce, and how do we meld those two together, and how do we attract the next generation of not only leaders but doers? And learning to speak the languages of the next generation and the millennials is going to be a challenge. Now, I talked first about safety, and I don't want to bypass that. When we think about safety, we have to think about the fact that we have to acknowledge we're living in a world now in which it's changing. The environment that we operate our transit systems is changing, and it's one in which the people that we interface with, whether they're passengers or the public around us that we operate around, have an ever-increasing array of distractions vying for their time and their focus. And as transit CEOs, we'll be challenged not only with distracted riders, but the drivers and the pedestrians, and how will we protect those people from their very own lack of situational awareness, and I think that's going to be a real challenge. When we talk about technology, we touched on it there, but how does technology change our systems? And when you look at the advances that smartphones have had in demystifying the ridership experience and making it easy to understand how to ride, and you'll know when the next bus or train is coming, you'll know what the fares are and the transfers, and as we look to the next 10 years, we'll be looking at ways to pay for that system, ride through your phone or other smart device, and how we integrate the ridership information into our daily lives in a much more integrated way. It's more than just about when's the trip coming, but how do we integrate that to the front and the back end of our trip and do it in an efficient and effective way. And I think technology is going to make leaps and bounds of changes in how we interface with our customers. And I think the last thing is regionalization of services. You think about how we move around our communities, we're not bounded by city, county, traditional political, geopolitical barriers. People move across city, county, state lines even very freely on a daily basis, and our systems need to reflect that, and we need to raise and train our general managers and CEOs and other senior staff in ways to be able to take their head up above the day-to-day operations and look at our systems in a regional way, and we can be leaders in the changing of land use and policies and financing and innovative ways to deliver service to our communities so that we are more competitive on a global basis. APTA's chair, Peter Varga, has a theme for this year, and it's that America's future is riding on public transportation. And it's a very important message, and it's one that's going to require some new skills and traits from CEOs. And as we look at what those are, I think key among them is being agile and being able to focus on a wide array of topics and challenges. As I was raised as a young general manager, our focus was just about making sure we made pull-out. We had high ridership. It was all about how many people did you have in your bus or your train. And as we look forward, it's about so many more things. It's about land use and redeveloping our communities and economic development and global competitiveness. And as CEOs, we have to develop those traits to look at a much bigger picture and not lose focus on delivering safe, reliable, dependable service, but being able to speak the language of developers and financiers and people that are looking to change our communities in a positive and competitive way. So I think that you'll find real challenges in that area that we've got to focus on. And it's also about, as our cities change, we have to have those skill sets in our own systems. When you think about when managers are hired, they may be hired to run a very smooth, effective bus system, and then as they grow and they want to add a streetcar or a light rail or a commuter rail line, you as a CEO must think, do I have the skill sets necessary to launch that new service, or am I going to force the board to have to go out and find someone else who has those skill sets and to have to replace me? So the challenge for us as CEOs is to make sure we're continuing to stretch our boundaries, to build new skill sets, and to anticipate where the demands in our system are going, and making sure that we are equipped to be the thought leaders and the management leaders in each of those different disciplines so that our boards are comfortable and prepared to move on with us as leaders. And if we're not ready to take on those challenges, then we have to be ready to move on so that someone else can come into those places. And those are choices we each have to make as CEOs. Are we ready to take on those new challenges and those skill sets and build our own personal portfolio? Because it's so important that we become experts in the variety of different areas so that we can manage them. And while no one manager can have all the skill sets for financing and construction and management and legal and planning, it's important to have skill sets in each of those areas to at least understand what you're going to need and how you can manage it in an effective and efficient way. And so a continuing focus on training, on educating, and making sure that we take our heads out of the system on a day-to-day basis and that we dedicate time each and every year to training and skill enhancement so we can be better managers for the future. And as we lead these changing organizations, it's important that we set an example, that we lead those resources in a way that other people can see that we're leading and really walking the walk and talking the talk. And any time you go through change, there's no question that we must learn to communicate better and to over-communicate. And when you think about all the different communication modes we have, often they're more of a distraction than an enhancement. So how do you marshal those communication opportunities to better deliver your message in a clear, concise way to your entire constituency or your workforce? And let's not forget that we have a responsibility to engage and inspire. People want to be inspired, they want to be led, and that's our responsibility. We must be good managers, good stewards of the resources, good leaders to our people, and good leaders in our communities. As the association that represents the industry, we have a role and a responsibility to help provide the skills, tools, and resources for our CEOs and our deputies aspiring to be CEOs to have the skills and tools they need, not just to lead their organizations now, but in the future. It's our role, and we have many resources available to our CEOs. First and foremost, at the beginning of each year, we kick off our year with a CEOs conference, specifically just for CEOs and for deputies. We have a deputies track there as well. And we have seminars, we have roundtables, we have small group discussions, we have educational sessions where people like Doug will come in and talk to us about working with our boards. We have panelists and guest speakers, and it's a safe place for our CEOs to come and learn. And we have a parallel track there for deputies where they sit in some of the things the CEOs do, and then we have them in breakout sessions where we focus on the skill sets they're going to need to do things such as working with boards and the public that they may not do in a more operationally focused deputy role. But it's beyond that in skills enhancement. We do things like we have a legislative conference where we focus on the skills they need to lead in the legislative area. We're going to do in 2014 an international practicum on transit funding and finance. We have an authorization task force that works on new ideas for authorization of federal funding. We do a regular webinar series, and we've got eight webinars for CEOs and board members on things like professional development, resource libraries, a session just on how working with transit board members, and different focus areas like that. We hold an annual meeting on policy and management, as well as a variety of other meetings on whatever their focus areas that they want to enhance their area of knowledge, whether it's sustainability or IT or legal. We have a variety of conferences in those areas. We also do Americans for Transportation Mobility Coalition, where you can get information on how to lead a campaign and how to do grassroots work within your community to enhance the number of people that support your transit system. And when we talk about support, we do things like we just won a major lawsuit against a rival star, a patent troll, that was trying to extort money out of our industry. And those are things we do to enhance the skill sets our managers have to be able to fight groups like that take us on outside. When we look at staffing, let's talk about the 5 things we focused on earlier. We've got sessions on safety and security and conferences and committees for that. We also have training programs for staff, whether it's early career, mid-level managers, leadership APTA for those moving into leadership roles. We've got a variety of opportunities for people to do that. And we work with outside partners like the Eno Foundation and the Transportation Learning Center, where we focus on the blue-collar trades. We've got technical training sessions and conferences just on technology and an annual Transit Tech Workshop. We'll also do some of those training things at our Transit CEOs meeting. And we've got technical sessions for rail and for bus and for other areas in the industry. And lastly, as we look at growth, we want to work with our outside partners, and we develop studies and research for our CEOs to use, whether it's a report with the National Realtors Association on home values along high-frequency transit corridors, or studies on millennials and how they use our systems. It's APTA's role to continue to provide education, tools, and training for our workforce so that they're prepared for the future, and we're happy to be a partner with the industry for that.